So books, and especially the greatest book, the Bible, that downloads knowledge into you like no other way. And knowledge is power. That was a statement, by the way, invented by Sir Francis Bacon, who was the spiritual advisor to the Queen of England in the 1600s. Sir Francis Bacon was one of the most respected intellectuals and geniuses in the entire world at that time. Sir Francis Bacon literally invented the scientific method and the need to prove your theories with empirical facts of discovery. Sir Francis Bacon was hired by King James to translate the King James Bible. Sir Francis Bacon was a highly respected scientist, physicist, chemist, mathematician, linguist. Sir Francis Bacon had an exhaustive knowledge of history and the history of super civilizations. But even though the world and the world's scientists respected Sir Francis Bacon for his knowledge and his scientific discoveries, Sir Francis Bacon secretly was not the secular humanist he pretended to be. Sir Francis Bacon and many others like him secretly were high-level occultists. So Sir Francis Bacon, he was the head of the Rosicrucian movement, a global, powerful occult society. The Rosicrucian movement eventually evolved into the Illuminati, and Sir Francis Bacon was the head of it. He was one of the world's most powerful occultists. He was an alchemical occult magician, and Sir Francis Bacon practiced magic, sorcery, communication with spirit guides, and fallen angels. That's pretty hard occult stuff. So, but like many of the world's most powerful occultists, they pretend to be secular humanists and atheists publicly, but secretly they're in the occult, the Illuminati, the Rosicrucians, other occult secret societies, and are deeply involved in the occult on a personal level. You see, why is it Satan and Satan's people understand this principle that God's people should understand, and they don't? Satan's people understand the need for developing your intellect, for acquiring knowledge, for developing yourself at the highest level in the fields of science, math, astronomy, biology, medicine, physics, you name it. All these advanced architecture, archaeology. Sir Francis Bacon was like the inventor of so many scientific inventions, and he proved so many scientific theories. He was one of the greatest scientists and intellectuals in the world. When you achieve that status, the world respects you. Promotion opens up to you. Doors of opportunity and influence open up to you, because you've proven yourself in a way the world respects. But secretly, he was one of the highest ranking occultists in the world and accessed supernatural powers, practiced supernatural powers like alchemical magic, which we'll get into later. I explain that in my books, A Prophecy of the Future of America, Volume 1 and Volume 2. Sir Francis Bacon was also led supernaturally because he was communicating with fallen angels. And Sir John Dee, who was also the advisor to the Queen, he mentored Sir Francis Bacon. And they learned how to communicate with the fallen angels secretly by learning and understanding the language of the fallen angels. And this language of the fallen angels was known as the Enochian or Enochian language, after Enoch in the book of Enoch. Okay? And they understood the sophisticated linguistics of the Enochian or fallen angel language, and they communicated with the fallen angels. That's pretty out there stuff. That's hardcore occult. And while they were communicating with these fallen angels who possessed supernatural knowledge, and that shouldn't really freak us out, because that obviously happened when the 200 fallen angels descended upon Mount Hermon and mated with human women and produced the hybrid species of the Nephilim. Those fallen angels that descended upon Mount Hermon they gave mankind all kinds of knowledge: physics, mathematics, philosophy, occult powers, biology, chemistry, medicine, government, farming, women how to put on makeup. I mean, just a vast spectrum of knowledge. And the fallen angels taught early man on Mount Hermon the occult secrets behind Mystery Babylon and how to build the ancient super civilizations. The ancient super civilizations were super civilizations in their technology, their science, and their mathematics, and their organization and power. An example of a super civilization would have been Babylon at the time of the Tower of Babel. And many people believe that the legendary Atlantis was the primary example of a super civilization. The Greek philosopher Plato firmly believed in Atlantis. And Plato said that Atlantis was ruled as a super civilization by 10 philosopher kings, or 10 scientific kings. That is where you get the Atlantean concept of this pyramidical rule and pyramidical organizational structure from top to bottom. So in a super civilization, or Atlantis, or in a communist nation, you have the elite, the globalist elite, and preferably the most intelligent people, the most gifted people in governing, ruling a top-down society. So you have a small minority, 10 philosopher kings, 10 scientific kings, and they will rule all of Atlantis. And that was a system of government that Plato studied. He wrote about Atlantis. Sir Francis Bacon studied. He wrote about Atlantis. And it was the secret desire of the secret occult societies to utilize this compartmentalization management, this top-down management of 10 philosopher kings or 10 scientific kings to rule the masses. That was their ideal form of government. And even to this very day, the pinnacle of the globalist elite, they are serious students of Plato, Atlantis, and the governing structure of the 10 philosopher kings, or the 10 scientific kings that will rule the masses. They do not believe, it's one of their primary beliefs, They believe the masses are genetically inferior, that the masses are to be brainwashed and programmed to be the slaves of the elite. But the elite, because they're genetically superior, must rule the nations and then eventually rule the world. Now, I explain all of this in The Greatest Battle for the Hearts and Minds of Mankind in the History of the World. I explain it in A Prophecy of the Future of America, Volume 1 and 2. I explain it in Mass Awakening that Doug Hagman wrote the foreword to. And in my brand new book, which I truly consider to now be the most important book of my life. My brand new book, which I'm finishing, but you can pre-order it now. And if you pre-order it now at paulmcguire.us, you can save money and get a pre-order discount. So you need to do that. The book, after constant prayer and thinking and studying, we titled the book Power from On High. Because, well, you'll have to read the book. There's a message that I believe that is so powerful for the body of Christ in terms of Bible prophecy and in terms of a multidimensional spiritual battle with demonic beings, principalities and powers, those who have given themselves over to the influence and control of demonic beings, occult science, mathematics, and physics, and then the supernatural body of Christ. And when these two opposing spiritual armies enter into conflict, a conflict which has already started primarily in the spiritual world or invisible realm, but it doesn't stay contained there. The spiritual battle between the forces of good and evil is going to rage with unspeakable intensity, and it will spiral out of the invisible realm or spiritual world, and it will crash down to the earth. And so that end times battle, the last days battle, that will be the fiercest, most intense battle for souls in mankind versus Satan in the history of the world. We are approaching that event. And that will be, by the way, to use the terms of scientists, it will be a human extinction level event. It's unprecedented. And in order for God's people to fulfill the destiny that God has for them, to fulfill the call that God has for them, in order for God's people to bring in the last day's soul harvest, in order for God's people to win this spiritual battle for the hearts and minds of mankind. God's people need to understand on a multidimensional but biblically authoritative level exactly what true biblical power from on high is and is not. And then they need to learn the biblical method of being clothed authentically with power from on high. When you and I and God's people are clothed with power from on high, both authentically and biblically, it's at that nanosecond that the game changer starts in this greatest spiritual battle for the hearts and minds of mankind in the history of the world. None of the crisis events that we see happening, like COVID variants, vaccinations, 5G EMF transmitters, EMF weaponry, silent sound, remote viewing, computer-to-brain interfaces that have been around for 50 years. Read my book. I prove it. I document all this stuff. So computer-to-brain interfaces have been around for 50 years, and they can control the behavior, the memory, the thoughts, and the emotions, rage, murder, peace, tranquility, by taking wires from a computer, connecting them to electrodes, and then shaving a person's head and inserting the electrodes into the skull. I mean, not deep, but into the skull. Because then you have a totally wired system. You're using a computer or some other electronic device to send electricity via wires into the electrodes, which goes directly into the human brain and human nervous system. And you can cause people to commit suicide or, be sexually aroused or blissful. I mean, there's nothing you can't do with it. It's been around for 50 years. And I explain all this in my books, especially A Prophecy of Future America, Volume 1 and 2. And, I forgot to name it to you, Conquering the Matrix. The neuropsychiatrist who pioneered research for this, for the government, was a Dr. Jose Delgado. And he was the one who invented the computer-to-brain wired interfaces. And he demonstrated quite theatrically how effective his technology was when he attached electrodes to the brain of a bull, that they used for bullfighting. And then the wires went from the skull of the bull, long set of wires, and the wires went into a computer. So with a giant audience of people watching a bullfight, he explained his scientific experiment, and Delgado had this bull charge one of the greatest bullfighters there was, who caused the bull to charge him. The bullfighter deliberately angered the bull to get the bull to come after him, waving a red flag and everything else. So what happened was, the bullfighter thought it was all over as this massive, angry bull charged at him with all its force, fury, and might. And the bull was right about to go aerial to some degree and pounce and ripped to shreds and thrust his horns into the physical body of the bullfighter. But as the bull was beginning to generate the intensity of charging that would have plunged him into the body of the bullfighter, Delgado simply flipped a switch on the wires that went from the computer to the brain of the bull, and then instantly the bull stopped and saved the life of the bullfighter. Now, it was very dramatic, but he proved publicly the power of a wired computer to brain interface. Okay, now 50 years later, this technology has been perfected, and I explain all this in Conquering the Matrix and the other books. So now where we are globally is we have what is called a global wireless, like Wi-Fi, a global wireless computer-to-brain interface, which simply means we don't have to run wires or electrodes into people's heads from a computer to control their behavior, thoughts, memory, so on and so forth. We can generate from a computer, even in a distant location or a remote location. We can send a wireless signal from the computer directly to a microscopic chip or biochip implant embedded in a human being or an animal. So it's a wireless transmission. So you can be a scientist sitting at your computer, or you could be an evil communist government sitting at your computer, and you could type in a few keystrokes and send, well, let's take a worst case scenario. You could send a signal through wireless communication, like Wi-Fi. You could send a wireless signal into the body or brain of a targeted individual and cause them to have severe depression, severe anxiety, hallucinate, be sexually aroused, fall asleep, remember things, forget things, be disoriented, go into paralysis, give them nightmares, through wireless transmission. Or you can send through wireless transmission instructions and orders, military orders, assassination orders. They call it a honeypot when they use a female and now male spies that possess the ability to sexually attract either a male or a female. And once they've gotten their target, and they bring them to a hotel room or whatever for the alleged purpose of a physical sexual relationship, those men or women are simply really spies, and they're going to retrieve information, and they're going to talk and get the targeted individual to reveal government and scientific secrets. But you see, you can control the targeted individual, and you can control and instruct your spy through a wireless computer-to-brain interface, because you have embedded a microscopic nanochip, biochip, or microchip implant in their body or brain, which is the receiver. Now, this technology is accelerated so quickly that many powerful nations possess it. And I, again, explain it. I explain it in detail in The Greatest Battle and in the book you can pre-order, Power from On High and Conquering the Matrix. SpaceX has launched initially 21,000 new satellites. 21,000 new satellites. That's Elon Musk. Elon Musk also owns, he invested $200 million the other day in what's called a neural implant company. A neural implant is essentially a biochip or microchip or nanochip implant. He's just calling it a neural implant. So what it is, it's a wireless computer-to-brain interface where instead of calling it a microchip implant or a biochip implant, you simply call it a neural implant. But it can do all those things to control somebody's mind, even against their will, by the way. One of the primary purposes of this additional 21,000 satellites that Elon Musk has launched, and Bezos is launching them too in competition, it creates a planetary Wi-Fi grid, borrowing heavily on the increased capacities of 5G technology. 5G, of course, as you know, is perhaps the most powerful consumer electromagnetic frequency technology that's being used in cell phones, alarm systems, and all kinds of electronic technology. It's so powerful that it actually has potential negative health aspects. So, from any one of these satellites, and it didn't begin recently, this goes back 20 years at least. So for 20 years at least, but now it's taken a rocket ride, no pun intended, for 20 years at least, and now even more so with the 21,000 SpaceX rockets. From satellites, you can send a signal via a satellite to any specific human being or targeted individual, and you can make them sick, afflict them with cancer, heart attacks, you can erase memories, you can insert instructions, you can insert or embed counterfeit memories, you can change behavior, mood, the list of things that you can do in controlling, enhancing, or degrading a person's mind. In other words, you can make them paranoid. You can make them psychotic. I mean, this is intense. No pun intended, but it's also past tense because it's been around for 20 years. It's just enhanced. So this wireless computer-to-brain technology can now be delivered into any human mind. Why? Because master computers know and have a file on essentially every person on planet Earth, because every individual on planet Earth, according to scientific reports, every one of us, that's you and me, we all have our own unique electromagnetic frequency that our body and brain generates. So the unique electromagnetic frequency that we generate as individuals is just as individual to us as a thumbprint or fingerprint would be. In other words, you know and I know that only me or only you, we have unique thumbprints and fingerprints that nobody else has. Sorry about that. That nobody else has. And then, on top of it, if you use biometrics and you put your face in front of a scanner and scans your iris and your face, your iris and your face has a totally unique, identifiable pattern that nobody else on planet Earth has the same unique, identifiable pattern that you have in your iris and face. Nobody else has one that's similar. The same with fingerprints, and the same with the actual electromagnetic frequency that every single person generates, whether they know it or not. It's as unique. Your EMF is totally unique. So satellites, machines, weaponry can easily, once they retrieve from the computer your unique electromagnetic frequency, they can beam a wireless electromagnetic frequency signal They can beam it into you as a potential target because you have a unique EMF field. And they can do all kinds of things, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So the critical thing here is that we need to be aware of these new technologies. We need to be up to speed. Now here's my final statement on this Paul McGUIRE prophetic emergency alert. And for those of you that are hearing it via audio as a Paul McGUIRE report. I'm going to get into this more. Many people, many of God's people, including me, believe that if we seek the Lord according to His instructions, if we repent, if we seek the Lord with biblical integrity and sincerity, that the Lord will pour out His Spirit on the U.S. and other places and send us in terms of a reprieve, an authentic biblical revival.